Hi, Jenny, and welcome back to Entrepreneurcast. It's so great to have you back on the show.
Hello, it's good to be back.
So, Jenny, today we are talking about being ready. So, when you actually think you're ready or when you know for a fact you're ready. And we talked earlier about it and you brought some examples about it. So I think that's an amazing point that sometimes people do not really know if they're ready or not, or they think they're ready but then they aren't, and sometimes that causes procrastination and all sorts of problems. So tell us, what do you think about the readiness, and what's your basically intake on it?
Okay, so I'm going to start by asking everybody to them truthfully, honestly, are you ready? Really? Now, there's a reason I ask that. You'll know that I'm known as the Queen of Being Seen, and you'll know that visibility is the thing that I get out of bed for. Your visibility, not necessarily mine. And so many people, to get out there and to be visible, to make an impact, to be able to tell people about what they do, to fit it all in and to sell themselves and their value, they will watch other people from afar. So here, let me give you an example. I asked you a few seconds ago, are you ready? Are you ready really? Now, quite often, I speak a lot. Svietlana speaks a lot. I can't even say your name today. Get my teeth in. She speaks a lot too. And like quite often, many of the hosts will ask us, who else do you know that would be good in this category or to speak about this subject? It can be a podcast, it can be a webinar, it can even be come and speak to my mastermind. And sometimes it's telesummits, teleseminars and things like that. I have myself so many people in my community, so many people who are my clients who say, Jenny, I really want to get out there. So let's take the most kind of popular one, the one that everybody thinks about at some stage, whether they do it or not, speaking. Part of your visibility journey may be to speak, but we're not talking about online now. We're talking about live, to real people, to real audiences. Your audience might be 10 people, it might be 1,000 people, it might be 10,000 people. And the reason that I ask, are you ready, is it's twofold. First of all, people think that they're ready because they say, I really want to get out there and speak. So let me ask you another question. Let's say that Svietlana and I were able to put you on a stage in front of 1,000 people in the next 12 hours. Would you know what to say? Would you know how to talk about the subject? Would you know how to build a framework? Would you have the confidence? Would you know the inner game of speaking? Would you be able to connect to your audience? Would you be able to influence? Now, if you've honestly answered no, don't worry, because there's going to be subsequent podcasts coming up and sharing exactly how to do some of those things. But if your answer is yes, again, ask yourself another question. Now, the reason that I'm getting all inquisitive and asking you these questions is what I shared with Svietlana before this was quite often people say to me, Jenny, I really want to speak about what I do. It's time. I need to get it out there in the world. And then I'll say, okay, what do you talk about? And they'll tell me. And I'll say, actually, I know somebody that I can refer you to. And there have been times where I'll refer a person to someone like Svietlana or other people that I have done in the past. I've got contacts in the States as well as the UK. And they'll sometimes, not often, but sometimes will come back to me and say, you know what, Jenny, they were such a lovely person, but they just weren't ready. And there's two ways that this shows up. So the first way is the more obvious way. They have a signature talk ready. They know how to adapt that signature talk to their audience so that their audience gets great content, great nuggets from what they're saying. They're not boring their audience now. They're engaging their audience. They're connecting with them. But they're also able to connect and engage with the host, which means that they don't get on a stage and start trying to pitch or sell something when it's not that kind of audience. They know whether, if their audience are adults or children, they know how to pitch what they're saying really well for the ears of the audience. They know how to influence that audience. And quite often, they know when the audience have had enough information, so they're not overstuffing their information. But the worst type of person who thinks they're ready is the speaker that thinks, oh, I'll just make it up as I go along. I'll blag it, as we say here in the UK. Oh, I'm really talkative. I'll be fine. I'll think of something. Because not only are you doing a disservice to the audience that are listening to you, that are forced to listen to you, but you're also doing a disservice to yourself. Because you've got this great talent, this great gift, this great message. Maybe it's a book, a product, or a service. And now you've just stuffed it up because you've been arrogant enough to think that you'll wing it, you'll get by. And you've been arrogant enough to presume that your audience will do the same. And that actually saddens me. So that's one way in which we can sometimes inadvertently not be ready or be ready. Now, the other way is there's like a mindset piece that comes in. It's almost like the difference between being a can't or a can. And that difference is mentally being ready, mentally knowing that you're up for the challenge, mentally knowing that you can really engage the people that you need to engage. And even if there's a little stream of doubt that's running internally, your audience on some level can spot it and you'll feel it too. It will sharpen your body language, or your non-verbals, as people say. It will sharpen your language. It will show up in your eye contact. It will show up in so many different ways. So there's like the inner game and the outer game. So rather than me telling you all about not being ready, let me share some nuggets and some tips to help you to be ready. So let's take the first scenario. You get asked to speak. Now, next time you go to a seminar, a conference, or somewhere where there's a speaker, I want you to do something. I want you to have your signature talk ready so that you could literally go to that conference and step in its place. Now, this is something that I've been doing for years. And funnily enough, when I started learning from a mentor in America, one of the things that she used to say is like, be there, be ready. So anytime I go to a networking meeting, to a conference, even at a conference where recently I was asked to speak on a particular subject, I also had an introduction ready that the host could introduce me. I also had another set of slides on a USB stick so that if one of their speakers couldn't make it, there was a big gap in their agenda for whatever reason, I could say to them, you know what, if you need someone else to speak, I'm ready. I'll speak about this. This is how you'd introduce the subject, but this is the value that it adds to your audience. Mentally, I'm ready, I'm prepared. I'm like prepared for anything, okay? There's a very big difference between being prepared for anything or being able to blag it. So those are the subtle differences there. The other piece is like how you show up inside. Now, when somebody introduces you to somebody else to speak on their platform, their stage, their tele summit, or anything else, if you tell that person introducing you that you are ready and you're really not, then you're now doing a disservice not only to the audience that were ready and waiting to hear what you had to say, to the host who's waiting for your content and what you're going to share, to the person who's introducing you, who's putting their reputation on the line and saying, you know what, I know this person to go. You know, mainly you're doing a disservice to yourself. So think about how can you be ready right now, like taking a no excuses approach. How can you be ready right now when you want to make sure that you're doing a great service to your host, to your audience, to yourself, and to the person that's recommended you? Here's what you need to look at. You know that I talk about the visibility vibe system, and you know that I talk about 5 key areas to help you really get out there. You want to know this, like, are you ready to go right now? Are you ready to be visible to that audience? Are you ready to serve that host so that they can serve their guests? They've taken the time to bring all of those people together, often live in a room or online. It takes a lot of effort. They've probably spent a lot of time, a lot of money getting those people together. So can you show up and be completely visible with impact, the sort of impact that has you remembered as the person who does the thing that you do? are you able to really succinctly let people know the value you provide, what you do for them? Are you able to keep to timelines? One of the things that happens so much is that people will be told, you'll speak to my audience for 45 minutes or an hour, and they'll go on and on and on and overrun. And whilst they might think that's great because I'm giving so much value, it actually throws a lot of stuff out for an event organizer, a conference planner. So always keep to time. And I'm really pleased to say, because I can be a chatterbox, and my last speaking gig, I had an hour. I thought I had 45 minutes, which probably helped, but I made sure that I rehearsed it. I made sure that I kept it down to a T. Now, I'm not a shy public speaker, not anymore anyway. But one of the things that a lot of speakers forget to do is to practice. Not just in your head, but to practice out loud. This is not practicing because you think you're no good and you're trying to get better. This is practicing because you're honing your skills, honing your talent, and honing your craft. This is practicing and listening back to yourself as to where you're completely adding value and where you might not be. This is listening out for language patterns or habits or little traits of things that you might say that might not land very well with your audience. This is practicing because you are great at what you do. This is practicing because you are the best at what you deliver. And this is practicing to show your expertise so that your audience can do something different, be different, act differently, think differently because of what you're saying. And that's really, really important, especially for those of us that class ourselves as inspirational or motivational speakers. It's all about them and nothing about you. So one of the things that you can also do is to make sure that you have a great framework. A great framework, I always say there's freedom in the framework. A great framework where you can deliver your talk, whether it's 10 minutes, whether it's 60 seconds, whether it's 45 minutes, whether it's 90 minutes, whether it's a one-day workshop, whether it's a 3-day workshop, but you fit it all in without overstuffing your audience. Does that make sense, Svetlana?
Yes, and I really like the point that you made with the speakers going on and on and on. I had that experience so many times. I was invited to speak at an event, and each speaker, it was full on with speakers, and we all had half an hour slot. And by the time it came to me, everyone has been overrunning their time. So by the time it came to me, they said, now you don't have 30 minutes anymore, you have 20 minutes. So I had to think fast and to talk fast. And I was done on the dot. I'm always done on the dot because I know that, if the person who organizes asks you to do it for a certain amount of time, you have to do it for a certain amount of time. You can't overrun. You need to keep to your time. So yeah, really like that point as well.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I remember being asked to speak up in East Anglia. So it took me probably 2.5, nearly 3 hours in the car to get to the speaking gig. And they had a lady that it was part of a business networking group, about 60 people in the room. So not huge, but not tiny. And the woman who had to go and she just had to introduce her organisation. It was like handing over to, Jane Doe, 10 minutes just to tell us about her organisation. She spoke for over 40 minutes. And what was interesting was not only did she so drastically run over time, none of the organisers seemed to know how to stop her. And it meant that when it came to my speaking gig, I was the main speaker for the evening, I had to do it in 10 minutes. It changed the dynamics of what I wanted to share because it was an experiential thing that I wanted to share. I wanted to get people up in the room, moving around, actually trying out these techniques. So it really dented that. And I just thought, I've spent all of that time in the car coming up here for 10 minutes. It happens. It really does happen. But it's such an important piece. And for those of you who go out and speak to sell your products and services, especially if you're service-based, you might be an author, a consultant, a coach, you might have online programs that you want people to buy. This is especially important. I've got a challenge for you. If you're asked to speak for 45 minutes, speak for 40. When you give a little bit less time, people feel like they've got all the time in the world to go and find out more about your products and services and shop with you, go and visit your website, sign up to your list and do all sorts of things. But when you go over, you'll see people like clutching at their bags and their briefcases and their keys and looking at their watch or checking their phone for the time of the next tube or train. So there's a stretch for you, especially for those of you that say, I don't need to hear this, I've been speaking for years. The stretch is make your talk a little less than the time allocated, and notice what happens. Notice the difference in engagement and connection. It's remarkable. It's absolutely remarkable.
Definitely. Well, let's hope that everybody gets really ready for whatever they have to do. And make sure that they know the difference between when they're really, really ready. Thank you so much
Yes.
for coming on the show today, Jenny. It's great seeing you, and I really look forward to our next episode next week.
Me too. Bye for now.